Hey guys, tonight we are standing in the middle of medieval Paris, and the first thing you notice is not the cathedral, the river, or the grand stone buildings. It is the smell. It hangs in the cool morning air, thick and strangely layered, as if the whole city has been quietly cooking something unpleasant overnight. Somewhere nearby, a cartwheel creaks over uneven stones. A dog barks. Someone opens a wooden shutter. A horse snorts. Water trickles along the edge of the street, carrying things you would rather not identify. You take one careful breath through your nose and immediately reconsider that decision. Welcome to medieval Paris, where you probably won't survive this if you expect the city to smell like a historical romance. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you settle in, comment your location and your local time below. It is oddly comforting to know where everyone is listening from, while you prepare to spend the night wandering through a city that has absolutely no modern plumbing waiting for you. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You slowly look around. The sun has barely risen, yet Paris is already awake. You are somewhere in the medieval city, surrounded by buildings packed closely together. Timber frames lean over narrow lanes. Upper floors extend outward, making the streets feel even tighter. The stone beneath your feet is uneven and damp. Your shoes are already collecting mud. You take a step. Something squishes. You stop. You look down. It is probably mud, probably. You decide that uncertainty is preferable to investigation. A man passes carrying a wooden bucket. He does not seem bothered by the smell. Neither does the woman sweeping the front of a nearby shop. Neither does the child chasing a dog through the street. You, however, are bothered. Very bothered. The problem is that you have arrived with modern expectations. You expect waste to disappear. You expect clean water to come from a tap. You expect toilets to be private. You expect garbage to be collected. You expect streets to be cleaned. You expect food to be protected from animals and contamination. You expect your home to have some separation between the places where you sleep, cook, wash, and dispose of waste. Medieval Paris offers you almost none of these comforts in the form you recognize. That does not mean the city is simply a giant pile of garbage. That would be too easy. People are not stupid. They understand cleanliness. They wash themselves. They clean clothes. They sweep floors. They remove waste when they can. They understand that rotten food is dangerous. They understand that unpleasant smells are unpleasant. They have rules and customs concerning sanitation, but they live without the infrastructure you take for granted. That difference is enormous. You begin walking. The street is narrow enough that two loaded carts would have trouble passing comfortably. Buildings rise on either side. Wooden beams form patterns across plastered walls. Some houses contain shops on the ground floor. People lean out from upper windows. Laundry hangs in places where you would not expect it. A butcher works nearby. You hear chopping. You smell meat. You smell smoke. You smell animals. You smell damp earth. And underneath everything is another smell. Human waste. It is not necessarily coming from one dramatic source. It is simply part of the environment. Medieval Paris has a complicated relationship with waste. People produce it constantly. Humans produce waste. Animals produce waste. Markets produce spoiled material. Workshops produce scraps. Kitchens produce bones and food remains. Households produce ash and other refuse. The city has to deal with all of it. And without modern sewer networks, waste management becomes a daily problem. You walk toward a busier street. Your shoes are now dirty. You are starting to wonder whether the dirt will ever leave them. A woman throws water into the street. You instinctively step backward. She looks at you as though you are being dramatic. Perhaps you are. Water is useful. It can wash away some dirt. It can cool surfaces. It can help clean household areas. But in a city without modern drainage, water does not magically disappear. It moves. It collects. It mixes with whatever is already lying in the street. You watch a shallow stream running along the side of the lane. You do not want to know what is in it. You decide to walk in the center. Then a cart approaches. You move aside. The cart is loaded with sacks. The horse pulls forward. Its hooves strike the stones. Mud splashes upward. Your trousers receive a fresh decoration. You stare at the stain. The horse keeps going. The horse does not apologize. You realize that this city is going to test your patience before breakfast. And breakfast is now something you are thinking about. You smell bread. That changes everything. A baker's shop is open. Warm air escapes through the doorway. The smell of fresh bread moves into the street and temporarily defeats every other odor. You follow it. For a moment, medieval Paris feels wonderful. Bread, warmth, people talking, a fire glowing inside, a baker working. You watch the dough being prepared. The scene reminds you that medieval life is not only dirt and misery. People live. They work, they eat, they joke. They raise children. They fall in love. They celebrate festivals. They worship. They argue. They complain about prices. They enjoy good food. They experience ordinary happiness. The filth exists alongside all of that. That is what makes a city interesting. You buy a small piece of bread. You hold it carefully. It is warm. You take a bite. For a few seconds, everything feels fine. Then you notice something moving near the wall. A rat. You freeze. The rat pauses. You stare at each other. It seems entirely comfortable. Then it disappears beneath a wooden structure. You decide not to think about it. You continue walking. The city grows busier. More people enter the streets. Merchants open their stalls. Workers carry goods. Children run errands. Animals move through the crowd. The air becomes warmer. The smells become stronger. And the narrow streets begin to feel crowded. You realize that your biggest mistake would be to judge medieval Paris only by modern standards. Instead, you need to understand the conditions that created this environment. Paris is growing. More people mean more homes. More homes mean more waste. More trade means more activity. More animals mean more manure. More households mean more cooking smoke and refuse. And the city's infrastructure struggles to keep pace. The result is a place where cleanliness is possible, but never guaranteed. You reach a corner where several streets meet. The ground is wet. A man is sweeping refuse toward the edge. Someone else is carrying a bucket away. A dog sniffs at something near a wall. A child steps around a puddle. Everyone seems to know how to navigate the environment. You are the only person who keeps looking down in horror. You begin to understand that survival requires adaptation. You have to learn which streets are safer, which puddles to avoid, which smells indicate food, which smells indicate something you should definitely avoid, where to find water, where to wash, where to buy bread, where to sleep, where not to step. The city is teaching you its rules. You simply have to learn quickly, because tomorrow morning the streets will be dirty again. And the morning after that, and the morning after that, the medieval city is not waiting for you to become comfortable. It is simply continuing to live. You finish your bread. You brush a few crumbs from your fingers. Then you hear someone shouting nearby. A cart has stopped in the middle of the street. People are trying to get around it. The lane becomes blocked. Someone complains. Someone laughs. A horse refuses to move. The entire street slows down. You watch. And suddenly you realize that sanitation is only one part of your problem. Crowding is another. In a city this dense, everything is close. Homes, markets, animals, workshops, people, waste, water, food, smoke, noise. Nothing has much room to spread out. And that means the city's problems can spread too. You look down the narrow street. The sunlight reaches only a small portion of the stones. Above you, the upper floors almost touch. Somewhere beyond these buildings is the Seine. The river will become important. Very important. For now, though, you have one question. Where are you supposed to use the toilet? You look around. No signs, no porcelain, no private bathroom, no flushing mechanism. You begin walking again. And with every step, the question becomes more urgent, because tomorrow, you are going to discover exactly what happens when an enormous medieval city has to manage human waste without the underground sanitation system you consider completely normal. For now, you keep walking. Carefully, very carefully. You wake the following morning with one thought already waiting for you. The toilet. Yesterday, you could pretend that the question had simply slipped your mind. Today, you cannot. You sit up on the straw mattress and listen to the medieval house waking around you. Someone coughs. Someone moves a wooden bucket. A fire crackles downstairs. A child complains about something. Outside, a cart rolls across the street. The city is beginning another day, and your body has made its opinion very clear. You need somewhere private, preferably somewhere clean, preferably somewhere that does not involve walking through the street carrying anything unpleasant. You open the door. The morning air enters. Unfortunately, the smell enters with it. You step outside. The narrow street is already busy. A woman is sweeping. A man carries water. A merchant opens his shutters. A horse stands beside a cart. People move around one another with the practiced confidence of people who have done this thousands of times. You have not. You begin looking for a toilet. You search for anything resembling a modern bathroom. You find nothing. Of course you don't. Medieval Paris has no network of flush toilets connecting every home to a hidden underground sewer system. That single difference changes everything. You may have seen medieval cities represented with people simply throwing waste wherever they please. Reality is more complicated. People did have toilets. People did have sanitation practices. People understood the need to dispose of human waste. But the systems were local, inconsistent, and far less convenient than anything you are used to. Some homes had privies. Some households used cesspits. Some people shared facilities. Others used containers indoors, especially when leaving the house was inconvenient. The contents then had to go somewhere. That is the part you are beginning to understand. A toilet is only useful if there is a system for dealing with what comes out of it. Modern cities hide that entire process beneath your feet. You flush. The waste disappears. You wash your hands. You walk away. You rarely think about what happens next. In medieval Paris, the process is much more visible. You walk along the street. You see people carrying buckets. You see workers dealing with waste. You notice drains and channels. You notice the smell. The city cannot hide its waste from you. You reach a building where a privy is available. You feel enormous relief. You step inside. It is basic. Very basic. There is no porcelain, no running water, no automatic ventilation, no soft lighting, no little bottle of scented soap waiting beside a sink. You sit carefully. The experience is uncomfortable, but at least you have privacy. You finish. Then comes the important question. What happens next? The waste has to be removed. Cesspits and privies require maintenance. If they are not emptied, they fill. If they overflow, the result is unpleasant. If waste reaches streets or waterways, the problem becomes much larger. This is where medieval sanitation becomes a matter of urban organization. The city has to control waste somehow. Authorities can create rules. Property owners can be required to maintain certain facilities. Workers can remove accumulated waste. Residents can be punished for certain forms of dumping. But enforcement is never perfect. A city is not a machine. It is millions of individual decisions. And some people will always choose the easiest option. You step back onto the street. Someone is carrying a bucket. You instinctively move away. The person does not seem embarrassed. This is work, necessary work. Someone has to do it. You follow at a distance. The worker moves through the narrow streets toward a larger collection area. You begin thinking about the people who perform these unpleasant jobs. Modern sanitation workers are often invisible to you. You notice them mainly when something goes wrong. A blocked sewer. A garbage collection problem. A flooded street. A broken pipe. Then suddenly you realize how important sanitation workers are. In medieval Paris, their work is even more directly connected to everyday life. If waste is not removed, it accumulates. If streets are not maintained, movement becomes difficult. If drains are blocked, water collects. If cesspits overflow, entire neighborhoods can become unpleasant or dangerous. The city needs people willing to perform work that most residents would rather avoid. You walk past a street where workers are clearing refuse. They use simple tools, no engines, no vacuum trucks, no protective equipment in the modern sense. Just tools, carts, buckets, strength, and experience. The smell is awful. You decide that perhaps this is the moment to reconsider your career choices. You keep walking. The street slopes slightly downward. Water moves along the side. You watch it carry bits of dirt and organic material. The temptation is to imagine that this flowing water is a sewer. It isn't, not in the modern sense. Medieval cities used drainage channels, gutters, and waterways to move water and waste. Some streets had arrangements intended to keep water flowing, but open drainage is very different from a sealed sewer system. Everything is exposed. Rainwater, mud, animal manure, food scraps, other refuse, sometimes human waste. The mixture moves through the city, and that is where the real problem begins. You have been thinking about toilets as a private issue, but sanitation is not private. One person's waste can become another person's environmental problem. A household throws refuse into the street. Rain carries it toward a low area. A drain becomes blocked. Water accumulates. People walk through it. Animals move through it. Nearby food becomes exposed. The problem spreads. This is why medieval cities developed rules about streets, drains, waste, and nuisances. People understood that uncontrolled waste made urban life worse. They did not need modern microbiology to know that filthy streets were unpleasant. They could see the consequences. They could smell them. They could experience them. But knowing something is harmful is not the same as having the technology to eliminate it. You continue toward the river. The scene is nearby. Its presence changes the landscape. The water is broad and constantly moving. Boats travel along it. People depend on it. The river is part transportation route, water source, economic resource, and geographic boundary. And now you realize another problem. A city needs enormous amounts of water. People need to drink, cook, wash, clean, brew, work. Animals need water too. The river can provide much of it, but if waste enters the same environment, the relationship becomes complicated. You stand near the riverbank. A boat passes. The water looks calm. You watch the surface. It is difficult to imagine this beautiful river as part of a sanitation problem. But medieval urban life does not separate water from waste as neatly as modern infrastructure does. The distinction between clean water and dirty water depends heavily on location, source, timing, and local practices. You turn away. You decide you will never look at a river the same way again. You walk back into the city. By now, the streets are crowded. A butcher carries waste away from his shop. A baker cleans his working area. A household throws dirty water outside. A horse leaves manure behind. Someone sweeps it aside. Someone else steps around it. The city constantly produces and redistributes dirt. And people constantly respond. Sweep, carry, wash, remove, dump, repair, repeat. That rhythm is essential. Medieval Paris is not dirty because nobody cares. It is dirty because enormous numbers of people are living closely together without the infrastructure required to keep everything clean all the time. That distinction matters. You begin to notice something else. The city has smells associated with different occupations. The butcher's area smells different from the baker's. The tanner's workshop smells different from the market. A stable smells different from a household. Certain trades produce particularly unpleasant waste. Some crafts require chemicals, animal products, dyes, or other materials. The location of workshops therefore matters. Cities have to balance commerce with public comfort. Sometimes authorities restrict where certain activities can take place. Sometimes businesses cluster in particular areas. Sometimes the smell simply becomes part of neighborhood life. You walk through a street where leather workers are active. The odor is strong. You immediately understand why some occupations have reputations for being unpleasant. The workers seem unconcerned. Again, this is their normal. You are the outsider. You continue walking. At the end of the street, you see a group of people arguing. They are pointing toward a gutter. Apparently, something has been blocked. Water has collected. Pedestrians are forced to walk around it. Someone complains. Someone else tries to clear it. A third person watches. You realize that even a small sanitation problem can become a neighborhood problem. A blocked gutter is not just ugly. It can make streets impassable. It can create stagnant water. It can damage buildings. It can attract animals. It can increase unpleasant smells. And if the problem continues, everyone suffers. The medieval city therefore depends on maintenance. Not perfect maintenance, not modern maintenance, but constant human attention. You begin to appreciate how much labor goes into keeping a city merely functional. You had imagined medieval Paris as a place where people simply endured filth. Now you see something more complicated. They fought it. Every day. With brooms, buckets, carts, gutters, privies, rules, workers, habits, and sheer persistence. They could not make the city perfectly clean, but they could make it cleaner than it would have been without those efforts. You stand in the street and watch a cleaner sweep mud toward the edge. The broom makes a rough scraping sound against the stones. Scrape, push, gather, repeat. You suddenly think about your own home. When you clean your bathroom, the waste disappears into pipes. When you take out the trash, a truck takes it away. When you wash the floor, dirty water disappears down a drain. You barely notice the infrastructure. Here you can see almost every step. That makes medieval sanitation feel much more immediate. You walk toward the river again. The Seine is waiting. The city depends on it. And soon you will have to understand exactly how much of medieval Parisian life is connected to this river. Because water can wash away dirt. Water can carry waste. Water can provide food. Water can transport goods. Water can support life. And water can also become contaminated. You watch the river flow beneath the morning light. It keeps moving. It has no idea that you are worried. It has been here long before you. And it will continue long after you leave. You turn back toward the city. The streets are already filling with people. Your week in medieval Paris has barely begun. And you have already learned that the greatest luxury you brought with you from the modern world is not electricity. It is plumbing. You stand beside the Seine and watch the water move. For a moment, it looks almost peaceful. The river slides beneath the morning light, carrying boats downstream and reflecting the pale sky above Paris. You might be tempted to think of it as a giant natural solution. A river means water. Water means washing. Water means drinking. Water means transportation. Water means life. And surely, if you live beside such a large river, staying clean must be easy. Unfortunately, you are about to discover that water can be both your best friend and your most complicated neighbor. The Seine is not simply a beautiful river passing through the city. It is part of almost everything. People travel on it. Merchants move goods along it. Fishermen depend on it. Workers use it. Households need water. Animals need water. The city itself has grown around it. You watch a wooden boat glide past. Inside are barrels and sacks. The boatman handles the current with practiced skill. You realize that without the river, Paris would be a very different city. The Seine is a highway. Before modern roads and railways, waterways are among the most efficient ways to move heavy goods. A boat can carry far more than one person could ever lift. Grain, wine, wood, stone, fuel, food, building materials. Everything can travel along the river. That makes the Seine economically essential. But the same river is also part of the city's water supply. And that creates a problem. The city is constantly producing waste. Some waste remains on streets. Some enters drainage channels. Some reaches smaller waterways. And eventually, some reaches the river. You stare at the water again. You suddenly become suspicious of everything you see. A piece of floating debris passes. You decide not to investigate. You are beginning to understand that medieval people did not have the same concept of invisible contamination that you do. They understood that foul water could make people sick. They understood that some water sources were better than others. They understood the importance of springs, wells, and flowing water. But the modern understanding of microorganisms does not exist. You cannot see bacteria, neither can they. So people judge water using what they can observe. Does it smell strange? Does it look dirty? Is it clear? Does it come from a trusted source? Has someone else been using it? Is the water moving? Does the source have a good reputation? These questions matter. You walk along the riverbank. Someone is collecting water. Another person is washing something. A boatman rinses an object. A fisherman checks his equipment. The river is being used for many purposes at once. You begin to realize that this is normal in a pre-modern city. Water is valuable precisely because there is so much demand for it. The challenge is keeping different uses from interfering with one another. You leave the riverbank and enter a nearby street. The smell changes immediately. Smoke, bread, animals, mud, human activity. You can no longer see the river, but it is still nearby. The city is connected to it. You wonder how people get drinking water. There are wells. Public and private sources can provide water. Some households may have access to their own wells or nearby sources. Others rely on water carriers or communal arrangements. Water is not delivered through a pressurized pipe directly into your kitchen. If you need water, someone has to obtain it. That person may be you. You watch a woman carrying 2 containers. She walks carefully. The containers are heavy. You suddenly appreciate your modern kitchen tap. You turn it on. Water appears. No walking, no carrying, no waiting, no negotiation. No concern about whether the source is accessible. It is one of those modern conveniences so ordinary that you almost forget it is extraordinary. You follow the woman for a short distance. She enters a house. The water is carried inside. That water will be used for cooking, drinking, washing, and cleaning. One container can serve multiple purposes. This means water itself is valuable. Wasting it would be foolish. You continue walking. A group of workers is carrying barrels. They are moving supplies from the river toward the city. The street is crowded. You have to squeeze past. Someone shouts. A cart blocks your path. A horse turns suddenly. You step backward. Your shoulder hits a wall. The city is always in motion, and the river is feeding that motion. You begin to understand why Paris became such an important medieval city. It is not only because people live here. It is because goods can arrive. Goods can leave. People can travel. Markets can grow. Industries can operate. The river supports all of it. But there is another problem: flooding. The Seine does not always behave quietly. Rain upstream can raise the water level. Seasonal conditions can change the river. When water rises, low-lying areas become vulnerable. A city built beside a river must constantly negotiate with it. You imagine waking one morning and discovering water where a street normally exists. Modern cities have pumps, barriers, warning systems, drainage networks, and engineered flood defenses. Medieval Paris has far fewer tools. People still understand floods. They still prepare as best they can. But the ability to control water is limited. You walk along the river again. The water level seems calm today. You are grateful. You continue toward a market. The river is behind you now. But your mind stays there. You are beginning to understand that cleanliness is not simply about removing waste. It is about managing water. If clean water is available, people can wash. If waste is removed, streets become more pleasant. If drainage works, puddles disappear. If rivers remain usable, transportation continues. All these systems connect. You arrive at a market. Fish are being sold. The smell is strong. You watch a merchant handle the catch. The fish has arrived through the same river network you were just observing. Water connects food to the city. You look at the market stalls. Everything is interconnected. A boat brings grain. A worker carries it. A merchant sells it. A household buys it. Someone cooks it. The remains become waste. The waste has to go somewhere. You begin to see the city as one enormous circulation system. Goods circulate. People circulate. Water circulates. Waste circulates. Nothing simply disappears. That is perhaps the biggest difference between your world and theirs. Modern infrastructure is designed to make things disappear from view. Waste disappears down pipes. Garbage disappears into trucks. Food arrives in sealed packages. Water arrives through hidden pipes. Electricity arrives through hidden cables. Medieval Paris shows you the process. You can see it, smell it, hear it. Sometimes you can step in it. You walk along another narrow street. A small channel runs beside the buildings. Rainwater flows through it. You watch a scrap of straw drift past. A dog drinks from a puddle nearby. You immediately stop. The dog does not seem concerned. You are concerned. Very concerned. You realize that animals have their own relationship with the city's water. Horses need drinking water. Cattle need water. Dogs find puddles. Chickens move around courtyards. Animals are everywhere. Their waste is everywhere too. This creates another layer of urban sanitation. People are not the only creatures producing waste. The city is full of animals, because animals are essential to medieval life. They transport goods, provide food, supply materials, help with agriculture, and live alongside people. You see a horse drinking. It lowers its head toward the water. You watch. Then you notice someone filling a container nearby. You decide you would rather not think about the overlap. The medieval city does not give you the luxury of separate systems. Everything is close. You return to the river. The afternoon sun is beginning to warm the water. Boats continue moving. The river looks almost indifferent to everything humans do around it. You stand quietly. For a moment, the noise of Paris fades. You hear the water, the soft movement of boats, the occasional call of a worker. Then the city noise returns. You understand something important. The Seine is not dirty simply because medieval people were careless. It is under pressure because the city depends on it. The more Paris grows, the more demands it places on the river. More people, more boats, more trade, more food, more animals, more waste, more water consumption. The river becomes both resource and receiver. That tension exists in many cities throughout history. Paris is simply experiencing it on a medieval scale. You begin walking home. On the way, you pass a public water source. People are gathered around it. Some fill containers. Some wait. A child reaches toward the water. An adult pulls them back. You watch the routine. It is ordinary. Nobody thinks of it as remarkable. But you do. You imagine replacing this scene with your own kitchen. A metal tap. Cold water. Hot water. Soap. A sink. A drain. A towel. Everything available within arm's reach. You smile. You have never appreciated a faucet so much. You continue through the streets. The sun is lower now. The river glows between the buildings. You can hear boats in the distance. You are beginning to understand that the cleanliness of medieval Paris depends on something far larger than individual behavior. It depends on infrastructure, on geography, on water, on labor, on rules, on habits, and on luck. A person can be careful and still live in a dirty environment. A household can clean its room while the street outside remains filthy. A merchant can protect his goods while the market around him remains muddy. A family can draw clean water while another household contaminates a nearby source. The city is shared, and shared environments create shared problems. You stop at the riverbank one last time. The Seine flows past you. Tomorrow you will return to the streets, but this time you will enter the heart of the medieval food market. There you will see exactly how food reaches people's tables when there are no refrigerators, sealed packages, or supermarkets. And you will discover that the smell of medieval Paris is about to become much more complicated. You look at the river. It continues flowing. You turn away, and you walk into the city. You leave the river behind and head toward the market. The city is fully awake now. Yesterday, you noticed the smell of Paris. Today, you are beginning to understand where some of those smells come from. The market is one of the busiest places in the city. People arrive from different neighborhoods. Merchants set up stalls. Customers negotiate prices. Workers carry baskets. Animals push through the crowd. Children weave between adults. And somewhere in the middle of all this activity, food is being prepared, sold, touched, transported, cut, cooked, and eaten. You approach slowly. The first thing you notice is the noise. Voices overlap. Someone is shouting about fresh bread. Another merchant calls attention to vegetables. A fish seller argues with a customer. A butcher speaks loudly to someone across the street. A cartwheel squeaks. A horse stamps its hoof. A child laughs. The market sounds alive. You move closer. The smell changes again. Bread, onions, herbs, fish, smoke, meat, mud, animal manure, human sweat. All of it blends together. You remind yourself that you are hungry. Unfortunately, hunger does not improve your ability to ignore smells. You stop at a bread stall. Fresh loaves sit on a wooden table. They look surprisingly good. You watch the baker handle them. There are no plastic gloves. No sealed display case. No automatic temperature control. No refrigeration. The bread is simply there. People buy it. They carry it home. It is one of the safest foods in the market because baking itself provides a useful barrier against many problems. You buy another piece. This time, you eat it immediately. It is warm and dense. You understand why bread is such an important part of medieval life. It is filling. It can be stored. It can be carried. It can accompany other foods. And grain can be transformed into something useful through baking. You move deeper into the market. Now you see vegetables, carrots, onions, leeks, cabbage, other seasonal produce. The exact selection changes with season and location. There is no supermarket offering the same selection every day of the year. Food depends on harvests, weather, transport, storage, local production, trade. You see baskets filled with produce. Some items look fresh. Others look tired. You begin wondering how long they have been sitting there. Modern supermarkets create a visual illusion of abundance. Everything is bright. Everything is arranged. Everything is available. Everything looks clean. Medieval markets are more honest. You see the dirt. You see the baskets. You see the people handling the food. You see the animals. You see the ground. You see the conditions under which food is sold. A customer picks up a vegetable, turns it over, checks it, puts it back. Another customer does the same. There is no barcode, no printed expiration date, no standardized packaging. The buyer has to judge quality personally. That skill matters. You watch an experienced shopper examine a piece of produce. They know what fresh food should look like. They know what a good price is. They know which seller they trust. They know what is in season. You realize that medieval consumers are not helpless. They have knowledge, local knowledge, practical knowledge, knowledge you would probably lack. You move toward the fish stalls. The smell hits you immediately. Fish is valuable food, but fish is also highly perishable. Without modern refrigeration, keeping fish fresh is difficult. Cold weather helps. Ice can sometimes be used in limited circumstances. Salting, drying, smoking, and other preservation methods are important. But a fresh fish market still has one obvious problem: time. Fish does not politely wait for you. You watch a seller arrange fish on a wooden surface. Customers inspect the catch. The fish has arrived through the river network. Some comes from nearby waters. Some may travel farther through trade. The market connects all of these systems: water, transportation, fishing, commerce, cooking. You step carefully. The ground near the stall is wet. Water mixes with scraps. Fish scales catch the light. Someone throws a bucket of water across the surface. It washes some debris away. You step backward. A fishmonger laughs. Perhaps you look too alarmed. You are starting to develop a reputation for being the person who is frightened by puddles. You continue. Next comes the butcher. You hear chopping before you reach the stall. The butcher is surrounded by customers. Meat hangs from hooks. The work is practical and efficient. Nothing is wasted if it can be avoided. Bones can have uses. Fat can be rendered. Organs can be eaten. Hides can become leather. Different parts of an animal can serve different purposes. You realize that medieval food culture is shaped by scarcity. When food is harder to obtain, wasting it becomes expensive. A modern person might throw away something because it is slightly old. A medieval household cannot always afford that luxury. But scarcity does not mean food is always safe. Spoilage remains a problem. Contamination remains a problem. Storage remains a problem. And the market environment is not sterile. You look around. There is mud on the ground. Animals move nearby. People touch goods. Hands are not constantly washed with soap. Flies appear. You notice one. Then another. You wave them away. The merchant ignores them. You try to ignore them too. You are beginning to understand that medieval cleanliness is relative. A market does not need to be perfectly sterile to function. It only needs to function well enough for people to continue using it. That does not mean there are no rules. Authorities can regulate markets. Weights and measures can be controlled. Certain foods may be inspected. Merchants can be required to follow rules about where and how they sell. But enforcement varies, and no authority can eliminate every dirty surface. You move toward a vegetable stall. A woman is arranging onions. She has been doing this for years. Her hands move quickly. She knows exactly where everything belongs. A customer asks about the price. She answers. They negotiate. The transaction ends. The customer leaves with a basket. You watch. This is ordinary. No drama. No historical spectacle. Just commerce. And that is important. Medieval Paris is not constantly terrifying. Most of the time, people are simply doing normal things. Buying food. Selling food. Carrying water. Going to work. Talking to neighbors. Your imagination wants every scene to become dramatic. Reality is usually quieter. Even the dirt is ordinary. It is not a cinematic cloud surrounding every person. It is simply part of the environment. You continue through the market. A child runs past carrying a small loaf. A dog follows. A merchant shouts at the dog. The dog ignores him. You smile. Some things apparently never change. You reach a stall selling prepared food. This interests you. Not everyone has a large kitchen. Not everyone has time to cook. Workers need meals. Travelers need food. Markets therefore provide opportunities to buy ready-to-eat or partly prepared foods. You watch someone serving a hot dish from a large pot. Steam rises. The smell is comforting. For the first time since arriving in medieval Paris, you feel genuinely relaxed around food. Hot food seems safer, at least emotionally. You sit nearby. You eat slowly. The meal is simple. Grain, vegetables, perhaps beans or another available protein. Seasoning makes a difference. Salt matters. Herbs matter. Spices can be expensive. Food tells you something about social class. A wealthy household has more choices. A poor household has fewer. The market contains both worlds. You see expensive goods alongside basic staples. You see people who can afford them. You see people who cannot. Paris is not one uniform experience. It depends on who you are, where you live, what you earn, what work you do, what connections you have, and what food you can afford. You finish eating. Then you notice something under the table. Waste. Food scraps, bits of vegetables, bones. Paper does not exist in the modern packaging sense. Plastic certainly does not. But organic refuse still accumulates. The market produces waste. Someone has to remove it. You watch a worker gather scraps. A basket fills quickly. The worker carries it away. Again, you see the hidden labor. Markets seem effortless when you only look at the finished products. But every market requires cleaning, restocking, transport, waste removal, security, regulation, and labor. Without those systems, the market would quickly become unusable. You continue walking. Now you notice animals. Chickens wander near a stall. A pig moves through a crowded lane. Horses pull carts. Dogs search for scraps. The animals are not visitors. They are part of the economy. A city without animals would be difficult to imagine. Horses transport goods. Cattle provide meat. Sheep provide wool. Pigs provide food. Chickens provide eggs and meat. Animals support work and survival. But they also create manure. Lots of it. You step around a fresh pile. You do not comment. You have learned. The market continues. You pass a seller of eggs. Another sells cheese. Another sells grain. Another sells cooked food. You realize that every food has a different storage problem. Eggs can last longer than fresh fish. Cheese can be preserved. Grain can be stored. Fresh meat is more difficult. Milk is extremely perishable. Food preservation is therefore not a minor household skill. It is essential. People use drying, salting, smoking, fermentation, pickling, other methods. These techniques allow food to survive longer. Without them, seasonal shortages would be much worse. You begin to see why salt is valuable. It is not simply a seasoning. It is a preservation tool. The same handful of salt can make food last much longer. You pass a stall selling salted products. The smell is strong, but now you understand why. Preservation. You look around the market again. The place is dirty, but it is also organized. People know where to buy things. Merchants know their customers. Workers know their jobs. Buyers know how to judge products. The market functions because everyone participates in a system of expectations. And that system includes cleanliness, even if it does not resemble yours. People want fresh food. They want good sellers. They want fair prices. They want meat that has not spoiled. They want bread that is edible. They want water that is usable. They want streets that are passable. The medieval city may lack modern sanitation, but it does not lack standards. You leave the market carrying another small piece of bread. The afternoon sun hangs above the rooftops. You are tired. Your clothes smell like the city. Your shoes are muddy. Your stomach is full. And you have learned something unexpected. The market is not simply a dirty place. It is the beating economic heart of the city. The dirt exists because so much life is happening there. So many people, so many animals, so much food, so much movement. And tomorrow, you will spend more time with those animals. Because if you thought the market was crowded, wait until you realize just how many creatures share the streets with you. Horses, dogs, chickens, pigs, and plenty of creatures you would rather not meet. You walk away from the market. Behind you, the voices continue. The city keeps eating, and therefore, the city keeps producing waste. You leave the market behind, but the animals do not. In fact, you are beginning to suspect that the animals may be following you. A dog trots past. A chicken disappears beneath a cart. A horse pulls a wagon around the corner. Then you hear a pig. You stop. The pig is standing in the middle of the street as though it owns the entire city. Nobody seems surprised. A woman walks around it. A man pushes his cart around it. A child laughs. The pig continues investigating the street. You stare. This is not a zoo. It is not a farm. It is medieval Paris. And animals are everywhere. You had imagined the city as a place occupied mainly by humans. That assumption was completely wrong. Medieval urban life depends heavily on animals. Horses transport people and goods. Oxen may assist with heavy work. Cattle provide meat and other materials. Sheep provide wool. Pigs provide food. Chickens provide eggs and meat. Dogs guard homes, accompany people, and search for scraps. Even animals that are not useful are still likely to appear. Urban wildlife does not ask permission. You walk carefully. The horse ahead suddenly stops. Its owner pulls the reins. The horse refuses to move. People gather behind the cart. You are trapped. Again. The owner speaks to the animal. The horse flicks its ears. Nothing happens. You begin wondering whether medieval transportation is actually controlled by horses or merely negotiated with them. Eventually, the horse moves. The crowd continues. You follow. The street is narrow. The cartwheels scrape against the stones. The horse's hooves strike the ground. And behind it comes the inevitable evidence of what the animal has been doing. Manure. A lot of it. You step around the pile. Someone else steps over it. A worker comes along with a shovel. You realize that horse manure is not treated as mysterious waste. It is a resource. In an agricultural society, manure has value. It can fertilize fields. Farmers need it. Urban stables can therefore produce something that rural agriculture desperately wants. The problem is transportation. Someone has to collect it. Someone has to move it. Someone has to use it. If that does not happen quickly enough, it remains in the street. You continue walking. A stable appears ahead. You can smell it before you see it. The smell is unmistakable. Inside, horses are being cared for. A worker carries water. Another cleans the stable area. The animals are valuable. A horse is not simply an animal. It represents transportation, labor, money, status. A healthy horse can make a merchant's work much easier. A sick horse can become an expensive disaster. So people care for animals carefully. You watch a stable worker brush a horse. The animal stands patiently. The worker checks its legs. You realize that animal care is part of urban survival. Without healthy animals, goods do not move efficiently. The market suffers. Travel becomes harder. Military campaigns become harder. Communication becomes slower. The city depends on its animals. But the animals also change the city. More horses mean more manure. More carts mean more traffic. More stables mean more smells. More animals mean more food and water requirements. Everything has a cost. You continue toward a residential neighborhood. A group of chickens wanders across the street. One disappears into a doorway. Another pecks at something near the gutter. Nobody chases them away. You realize that chickens can live close to households. They provide eggs. They are relatively easy to keep. They can feed themselves from scraps. For a household, that makes them useful. But again, usefulness creates mess, feathers, droppings, food scraps, noise. The city becomes a shared habitat. You pass a courtyard. A pig is being fed. The animal is large, very large. You stare at it. The owner throws scraps into a trough. The pig eats quickly. You remember that pigs can turn food waste into meat. That makes them surprisingly useful in dense settlements. But pigs are also curious. They root around. They eat scraps. They can wander. And when animals move through public spaces, sanitation becomes complicated. You see a pig walking through another street later that afternoon. This time, nobody even looks up. You are learning. The city has its own hierarchy of normal. Things that would make you stop and take a photograph are invisible to people who see them every day. A pig in the street? Normal. A horse cart? Normal. A chicken under a table? Normal. A dog searching for food? Normal. A muddy gutter? Unfortunately, normal. You continue. A dog follows you. You look back. It looks at you. You keep walking. It follows. You stop. It stops. You start again. It starts again. Eventually, you realize it is probably interested in the smell of your bread. You break off a tiny piece. The dog takes it. Now you have made a friend, or an accomplice. You are not sure which. The dog disappears. You smile. For a moment, the medieval city feels almost charming. That is another important part of the story. The past was not miserable every second. Animals could provide companionship. Children could play with dogs. People could care deeply for horses. Households could raise chickens. Pigs could provide valuable food. The presence of animals created problems, but it also made urban life possible. You walk farther. Then you notice another animal. A rat. It moves quickly beneath a wooden cart. You barely see it. Then another appears near a pile of refuse. You freeze. Rats are not unusual. They are part of the city's ecological system. Where people live, food accumulates. Where food accumulates, animals follow. Rodents are experts at exploiting human environments. They hide. They reproduce. They search for scraps. They live in walls, floors, storage areas, sewers, drains, and piles of debris. You cannot simply order them to leave. You can remove food. Seal openings. Keep storage areas clean. Use traps. Use cats. But total control is nearly impossible. You notice a cat sitting near a doorway. The cat watches the street. Perhaps it has a job. You are beginning to appreciate medieval pest control. You continue walking. The city smells different from one block to another. Near a stable, you smell manure. Near a bakery, bread. Near a butcher, meat. Near a tannery, animal hides and chemicals. Near a household, smoke. Near a drainage channel, something much less pleasant. Animals are part of this mixture. You begin to understand why medieval people had such practical relationships with them. An animal is not merely a pet. It can be food, labor, transportation, clothing, security, trade, waste, companionship. Different animals occupy different roles. You reach a busy street again. A wagon loaded with barrels passes. The horse pulls hard. The driver shouts. People move aside. The cart passes. You realize that traffic management is another hidden problem. Modern streets are designed around lanes, signs, traffic lights, sidewalks, and standardized vehicles. Medieval streets are not. People walk wherever there is room. Animals move wherever they can. Carts need space. Merchants occupy parts of streets. Buildings project outward. The result is constant negotiation. You watch two carts approach each other. Neither wants to reverse. The drivers argue. People laugh. Eventually, one cart backs up. The street opens. Everyone continues. You smile. Apparently, traffic disputes are also ancient. You keep walking. A stable worker empties a pile of manure into a cart. The smell is intense. You move away. The worker does not. He is doing necessary work. You think about the modern city again. Imagine removing every sanitation truck, every garbage collector, every street cleaner, every sewer worker, every animal waste management system. Now imagine waiting a week, then another. The city would change rapidly. That is the lesson medieval Paris teaches you. Cleanliness is not a permanent condition. It is an ongoing process. Someone must maintain it. And animal waste is one of the largest daily challenges. You pass another stable. A horse is being fed. The animal's coat shines. Its owner looks proud. You realize that the city contains people who know exactly how to care for animals. They understand feeding, grooming, shoeing, rest, work, disease. They have practical knowledge built through experience. You may know more about modern technology, but if a horse refuses to eat, your knowledge is probably useless. That humility is beginning to become a theme of your week. Every day, you discover something medieval people know better than you. How to judge a horse. How to preserve food. How to recognize good grain. How to find usable water. How to navigate muddy streets. How to avoid certain areas. How to live without modern plumbing. You are the beginner. They are the experts. You reach a quiet residential lane. A woman is feeding chickens near her home. A dog sleeps beside the doorway. Children play nearby. The scene is surprisingly peaceful. You stop and watch. This is the softer side of animal life in medieval Paris. Animals are not always a nuisance. They are part of household life. A chicken can provide breakfast. A dog can protect a home. A horse can support a family's livelihood. A pig can become food. A cat can keep rodents under control. Every creature has a place. Even the creatures you wish would disappear. You look down the street. The sun is beginning to fall. A horse cart passes in the distance. The sound of hooves echoes between the buildings. A dog barks. Someone closes a wooden shutter. The city is settling into evening. You return toward the house. Your shoes are dirty again. Your clothes smell like horses. You have somehow acquired another layer of medieval Paris. You sit outside for a moment. The dog from earlier appears again. You laugh quietly. Maybe you have made a friend after all. Then you hear something moving inside the wall. You stop smiling. It is a scratching sound. Then another. You look toward the wooden wall. Something is moving behind it. You already know what it might be. The rats are waiting. And tomorrow, you are going to discover that animals do not always stay outside. Sometimes, they move directly into your home. The scratching behind the wall continues. You sit very still. Scratch. Pause. Scratch. You stare at the wooden boards beside you. You know what is probably on the other side. A mouse. Perhaps a rat. Perhaps several. You tell yourself that this is normal. Then you remember that you are supposed to be sleeping here. Suddenly, the straw mattress feels much less inviting. You lean closer. Nothing. Then another faint scratching sound. You decide not to investigate. This is one of those moments when ignorance feels like a perfectly reasonable survival strategy. You lie back down. The room is dark. The fire has nearly gone out. Outside, the city has become quieter. But it is never completely silent. A cart rolls somewhere in the distance. A dog barks. Someone calls from another building. Wood creaks. Then you hear the scratching again. You pull the blanket higher. Welcome to medieval pest control. Modern life gives you an extraordinary advantage here. You can seal food in containers. Close windows. Install screens. Use traps designed with precision. Call pest control professionals. Repair walls with modern materials. Keep food in refrigerators and cabinets. You can make your home extremely difficult for rodents to enter. A medieval home is not nearly as secure. Wooden walls have gaps. Floors may have openings. Roofs can have spaces. Food is stored in sacks, baskets, barrels, and wooden containers. Grain is everywhere. And grain is exactly what rodents want. You close your eyes. You imagine a rat moving through the wall. It has no reason to fear you. You are simply another large creature occupying the same building. Eventually, exhaustion wins. You fall asleep. When you wake, sunlight is entering through the small window. For one beautiful second, you forget about the scratching. Then you remember. You sit up. The room looks unchanged. The wall looks unchanged. Your food is still where you left it. You inspect the container, nothing obvious. You feel relieved. Then you notice a tiny disturbance in the straw nearby. You stare. Perhaps it is nothing. Perhaps it is exactly what you think. You decide to leave the room. Outside, the morning has begun. A cat sits on a doorstep. It watches you. You look at it differently now. Yesterday, the cat was simply a cat. Today, it is a highly trained medieval pest control specialist. You nod respectfully. The cat does not respond. You continue. The street is already busy. A woman sweeps the entrance to her home. A merchant opens his shop. A worker carries sacks of grain. A baker brings bread outside. You suddenly notice how many of these activities create opportunities for rodents. Grain, bread, vegetables, meat, waste. Every food source attracts something. The city is an enormous buffet, and rodents do not care about social class. They can live near wealthy households. They can live near poor households. They can live near markets. They can live near warehouses. Where food is available, they may appear. You walk toward a grain storage area. Several large sacks are stacked against a wall. A worker checks them. He lifts one, looks underneath, examines the floor. This is not paranoia. It is routine. Stored food is valuable. If rodents damage it, the household loses resources. If insects infest it, the same thing happens. Pests are not merely disgusting, they are economically dangerous. You watch the worker move a sack. There are tiny marks near the bottom. He notices them too. He calls someone over. The two workers discuss the problem. One suggests moving the grain. The other checks the wooden container nearby. You realize that pest control is mostly prevention. Keep food protected. Keep storage areas clean. Remove waste. Use traps. Use cats. Inspect supplies. Do not give rodents easy access. The methods are simple, but simple does not mean easy. You walk onward. A marketplace is opening. The same cycle begins again. Bread, grain, vegetables, fish, meat, cheese, eggs, people, animals, waste. You begin to see the city as a chain. Food attracts people. Food also attracts animals. People produce waste. Animals produce waste. Waste attracts more animals. Workers remove waste. Then the cycle begins again. The city is constantly balancing itself, sometimes successfully, sometimes not. You reach a bakery. The baker is carrying fresh loaves. You watch him place them on a wooden table. A cat sits nearby. You suspect the cat has been hired. The baker looks at it. The cat looks back. There is an understanding between them. You smile. Perhaps this is the most advanced pest control system in the neighborhood. You move on. A small child is carrying grain in a container. An adult tells the child to keep it covered. You realize that people learn these habits early. Protect food. Do not leave scraps everywhere. Keep animals under control. Clean cooking areas. Store grain carefully. These are not scientific theories. They are practical lessons. A child who ignores them may lose food. A household that ignores them may lose stored grain. A merchant who ignores them may lose valuable stock. People learn through experience. You continue walking. Soon, the street becomes narrower. You pass behind several workshops. The smell is stronger here. There is dampness. Refuse. Animal waste. Smoke. You notice flies. Again. You wave them away. The flies return. You begin to understand that medieval pest control is not only about rodents. There are insects everywhere. Flies, fleas, lice, bedbugs, other tiny creatures that modern people rarely have to think about constantly. These creatures are difficult to control because they are small, numerous, and adaptable. They live in clothing, bedding, hair, walls, animals, food, waste. And crowded cities give them plenty of opportunities. You touch your sleeve. You suddenly wonder what is living in your clothing. You decide that ignorance is still the better option. You continue toward a public washing area. People are cleaning clothes. This catches your attention. Washing is important, but washing clothes is hard work. There are no washing machines, no spin cycles, no heated indoor laundry rooms, no detergent pods. Clothing has to be carried, soaked, scrubbed, rinsed, wringed, dried. The process takes time and physical effort. You watch someone beating a garment against a washing surface. The sound is rhythmic. Thump, scrub, rinse, repeat. You think about how many hours a medieval household spends maintaining basic cleanliness. A modern washing machine can complete an entire load while you do something else. Here, someone has to do the work. And clean clothing matters. Clothing can collect dirt, sweat, smoke, food, dust, animal contact, insects. If it is not washed or changed, it becomes unpleasant. But washing everything constantly is impossible. Water must be collected, carried, heated, used, then disposed of. So people balance cleanliness against labor. You watch the washing continue. The work is tiring. Yet the people doing it seem practiced. Their movements are efficient. Again, you realize how much practical knowledge exists in ordinary life. You would struggle. They would not. You walk away. A breeze moves through the street. For a moment, the smell improves. Then you pass a stable. It disappears. You laugh quietly. Medieval Paris is teaching you not to celebrate too early. You continue toward another neighborhood. Here the buildings are more crowded. Upper floors project over the street. Timber beams create dark spaces. Windows are small. Light is limited. You imagine living inside one of these houses. The lack of sunlight would matter. So would ventilation, smoke from fires, dampness, crowding. All of these affect comfort, and pests love hidden, dark places. You look at the walls again. You are now convinced that every wall is suspicious. You enter a small courtyard. A cat moves quickly across the stones. It stops near a storage area. Its ears point forward. Then it disappears. You wonder what it saw. You do not follow. Some mysteries are better left unsolved. By afternoon, you return to the market. You see workers clearing refuse. This makes more sense now. Waste removal is pest control. Every scrap left behind becomes a possible food source. Every uncovered grain sack becomes an invitation. Every pile of refuse becomes shelter. Keeping the city cleaner does not eliminate pests, but it reduces opportunities. You watch the workers carefully. Their work is repetitive. Sweep, gather, carry, dump, return, sweep again. It is not glamorous, but without it, the city would become even more difficult to live in. You begin to appreciate these workers differently. Yesterday, they were simply people carrying unpleasant buckets. Today you understand that they are part of the city's defense system. Against dirt, against pests, against accumulated waste, against the gradual collapse of urban order. You continue walking. The sun begins to lower. A merchant closes his stall. A horse cart moves home. A dog follows its owner. A cat disappears beneath a doorway. You return to your lodging. The room is quiet. You look at the wall. No scratching. You wait. Nothing. You smile. Perhaps the creature has gone. You sit down. You begin to relax. Then, scratch. You stare at the wall. Another scratch. You sigh. The medieval city has many inhabitants. Apparently some of them are living with you. You lie down again. But now you understand something important. The problem is not that medieval people did not know about pests. They absolutely did. The problem is that controlling pests without modern materials, refrigeration, sealed packaging, chemical treatments, and engineered buildings is extremely difficult. The battle never completely ends. You can clean. You can store food carefully. You can use cats and traps. You can remove refuse. And still, something may crawl through a crack at night. You close your eyes. The scratching continues softly. Outside, Paris sleeps. Inside the wall, something else is awake. And tomorrow you will leave the pest behind for a while. Because there is another problem waiting for you: personal cleanliness. And once you discover how much effort it takes to stay clean without modern bathrooms, you may start missing your shower more than ever. Morning arrives before you are ready for it. You wake slowly, listening to the sounds outside: a cart, a distant bell, footsteps, someone calling to another person. Then you notice something else. Your skin feels uncomfortable. Your hair feels heavy. Your clothes do not feel fresh. And suddenly you remember the subject you have been avoiding: bathing. You sit up. In your modern life, bathing is so ordinary that you rarely consider it an achievement. You turn a handle. Water comes out. You adjust the temperature. You stand beneath it. Soap removes sweat and oil. A towel dries you. Clean clothes finish the process. The entire experience can take minutes. Here it is completely different. You cannot simply step into a private bathroom. There is no shower waiting behind the next door. There is no hot water heater. There is no unlimited supply of clean water. If you want to wash, you need water. And water needs to come from somewhere. You climb out of bed. Your feet touch the floor. You immediately wonder when the last time this room was properly cleaned. You decide not to investigate. You open the door. The morning air feels cool. You step outside. The street is already alive. A woman carries water. A man walks toward the market. A child runs past. A horse cart moves slowly between buildings. You notice several people who look remarkably clean. This surprises you. You had expected everyone to appear permanently filthy. But that is not how medieval life works. People care about cleanliness. They wash. They clean their hands and faces. They wash clothes. They comb hair. They maintain their bodies. The difference is not that medieval people never bathe. The difference is how difficult regular bathing can be. You walk toward a water source. A small group is already there. People are filling containers. You watch one person pour water into a basin. Another washes their face. You understand immediately. A basin is a very different experience from a shower. You have to ration the water. You have to carry it. You have to heat it if you want warm water. And after using it, you have to dispose of it. Every step requires labor. You begin thinking about your own bathroom. You can use as much water as you need. You can wash your hair, rinse, wash again, rinse again. You can stand under hot water while staring at the wall and thinking about absolutely nothing. Here, every bucket has a purpose. You watch a woman carry water home. She has to walk, fill, lift, carry, pour, repeat. You suddenly feel guilty about every time you left the modern tap running. You continue through the street. A public bathhouse may offer another possibility. Bathing establishments existed in medieval European cities, though their availability, popularity, and regulation changed over time. The idea of communal bathing was not strange. People could visit places where water was heated, and bathing was possible. You approach a bathhouse. Steam escapes from an opening. You stop. For the first time today, you feel hopeful. You enter. The atmosphere changes. Warm air surrounds you. People are talking. Water is being prepared. The building is busy. This is not your private bathroom. It is communal. Other people are nearby. You cannot simply close a door and enjoy complete solitude. But there is warmth. There is water. There is the opportunity to wash. You begin to understand why bathhouses could be important social spaces. People did not simply enter, clean themselves, and leave. They could talk, exchange news, meet acquaintances, conduct business, relax. Bathing could become part of social life. You sit near the warm water. Steam rises. Your shoulders relax. You feel better almost immediately. You realize how much you missed warmth. The city outside is cold and noisy. Inside, everything feels slower. People speak quietly. Water moves. Wood creaks. Steam hangs in the air. For a few minutes, medieval Paris seems surprisingly comfortable. Then you remember that this is not available to everyone all the time. Bathhouses cost money. They require fuel. They require water. They require maintenance. They are businesses. And access can change depending on social conditions, regulations, disease concerns, and local customs. Still, their existence tells you something important. Cleanliness mattered. People wanted to wash. They valued bathing. They understood that being clean felt better. You step toward the bathing area. You wash carefully. There is no modern shower pressure, no endless hot water, but the water feels wonderful. You wash your hands, your face, your arms, your hair. You begin to feel human again. Then you notice something else. Soap. Soap exists. This is another surprise. You had somehow imagined medieval people scrubbing themselves with mud. Not quite. Soap making existed in medieval Europe. Different soaps varied greatly in quality and composition. Some were made from fats or oils combined with alkaline substances. Soap could be expensive depending on ingredients and location, but the basic idea was certainly not unknown. You use what is available. It is not the same as modern scented body wash. There is no citrus shower gel, no lavender foam, no tiny bottle promising 12 hours of freshness. But it works. You rinse, you feel cleaner. You begin to understand that medieval hygiene is not absent. It is limited by resources. That distinction keeps returning. You leave the bathing area feeling refreshed. Your hair is wet, your clothes are still the same. That is a problem. You begin to realize that bathing is only one part of cleanliness. If your clothes are dirty, you still feel dirty. If your bedding is dirty, sleep becomes uncomfortable. If your home is smoky, you smell like smoke. If you work around animals, you smell like animals. Personal hygiene is connected to household hygiene. You walk back toward your lodging. On the way, you see someone washing their hands near a basin. Another person is combing their hair. A woman adjusts her clothing. A child has their face washed by an adult. These small acts are easy to miss, but they happen constantly. People care about appearance. Cleanliness can signal respectability. A dirty person may be judged negatively. A merchant wants to look presentable. A worker wants to appear respectable. A wealthy household may have more resources for washing. A poor household has fewer. Again, social class changes the experience. You return home. Your clothes need attention. You look at them. They are dusty. You can see small stains. You realize that washing them properly is another project. You find a basin. Water is brought in. The washing begins. The garment is soaked, scrubbed, rinsed, wringed, hung to dry. You help. After several minutes, your arms are tired. You laugh. A washing machine would finish this while you watch television. Here, you are the washing machine. You continue scrubbing. The fabric becomes cleaner. The water becomes darker. You pour it away. Then you realize the water has to go somewhere. Again, nothing disappears. You carry the dirty water outside. You pour it into an appropriate drainage area. You return. The work continues. You look around the room. The floor needs sweeping. The bedding needs airing. The fire has left soot. There is dust in the corner. You realize that keeping a medieval home clean is an ongoing occupation, not because people are obsessed with cleanliness, because the environment constantly creates dirt. Smoke enters, mud enters, animals enter, people enter, food leaves crumbs, clothing brings dust, rain brings moisture, the street brings everything. You sweep, dust rises, you cough. You realize that perhaps sweeping is not as satisfying as you expected. You sweep again. The floor looks better. You stop. For a moment you feel proud. Then someone walks in with muddy shoes. You stare at them. They stare at you. You both understand. The floor will not stay clean. You laugh. This is medieval housekeeping. You leave the house again. The street smells slightly but feel better. You pass a group of people talking. One person looks particularly well dressed. Clean clothing. Carefully arranged hair. Good posture. You realize that grooming can communicate social status. Appearance matters. It always has. Even without modern cosmetics, people can style hair. Clean clothing. Use perfumes or scented substances where available. Maintain facial hair. Care for skin. Personal presentation is part of social life. You continue walking. A barber shop appears ahead. You stop. This seems useful. Barbers are not only hair cutters. Historically, barbers in medieval Europe could perform a variety of grooming and practical services, though their exact roles varied by place and period. Hair, beards, shaving, other forms of personal care. You watch a customer sit down. The barber prepares his tools. The customer trusts him with a very sharp blade. You decide that modern disposable razors are another underrated miracle. The barber works carefully. The customer remains still. The process is slow, but the result is neat. You move on. The day is becoming warmer. Your freshly washed skin feels different. You understand why bathing can matter psychologically, as well as physically. It makes you feel renewed. But you also understand why frequent bathing cannot simply be assumed. Water must be collected, fuel must be gathered, baths must be heated, clothing must be washed, time must be spent, money may be required. The modern bathroom hides all of that. You turn on the tap. Water appears. You turn the tap off, the infrastructure disappears again. Medieval Paris keeps the infrastructure visible. You see the person carrying the water. You see the wood being burned. You see the bathhouse. You see the workers. You see the laundry. You see the dirty water leaving. Nothing is effortless. You return to your lodging. The afternoon is quiet. You sit near the window. Outside, people continue moving. The city is still dirty. The streets are still muddy. Animals still pass. Waste still exists. But now you are cleaner. And that feels like a small victory. You have discovered something important. Medieval Paris is not a city where nobody washes. It is a city where washing requires planning. Cleanliness is a task, a household responsibility, a community service. sometimes a business, sometimes a social activity, and always, somehow, a battle against the environment. You lie back for a moment. Your hair is still slightly damp. The room smells of smoke. Outside, someone is shouting. A horse walks past. You close your eyes. You almost feel comfortable. Then your stomach growls. You remember lunch. And soon, you will discover that staying clean is only one part of surviving here. Because after food, water, animals, and dirt comes another challenge: sleep. And in medieval Paris, even sleep is not as peaceful as you might hope. Night arrives quietly at first. You return to your room after another long day. Your body is tired. Your feet ache. Your clothes feel heavy. You have eaten. You have washed. You have survived another day in medieval Paris. Now you want only one thing: sleep. You look at the straw mattress. It does not look terrible. That is encouraging. You sit down carefully. The mattress compresses beneath you. It is not soft in the modern sense. It is a bundle of dry plant material packed into a fabric cover. Some mattresses may be filled with straw or other materials. The quality depends on the household. A wealthy person may have a better bed. A poorer person may sleep on something much simpler. You lie down. The first thing you notice is the texture. Scratchy, uneven, not exactly luxurious. You move your shoulder. A piece of straw presses against you. You pull the blanket higher. The room is cold. There is no central heating, no thermostat, no radiator quietly warming the walls. If you want warmth, you need a fire, and fire has its own problems. Smoke, sparks, fuel, maintenance. You glance toward the fireplace. A few embers remain. The room is warmer than outside, but only slightly. You understand why bedding matters so much. Blankets, furs, wool, clothing. Anything that traps body heat becomes valuable. You pull another layer over yourself. The night deepens. Outside, Paris continues making sounds. You hear footsteps. A distant cart, a dog barking, someone laughing. Then silence. Then another sound, a bell. You open your eyes. The bell echoes through the darkness. Time in a medieval city is not measured only by clocks. Church bells organize daily life. They mark religious services. They help people understand the rhythm of the day. They can wake people, call them to work, signal important events. You listen until the sound fades. You close your eyes. Another noise begins. A horse. Hooves strike the street. Slowly. Then fade. You turn over. The straw mattress makes a quiet rustling sound. You sigh. You are beginning to understand that medieval sleep is not perfectly quiet. Modern bedrooms can be surprisingly isolated. Thick walls. Double-glazed windows. Electric lights. Soundproofing. White noise machines. Air conditioning. Fans. Everything can be adjusted. Medieval rooms are more exposed. Sound travels. Cold travels. Smoke travels. Smells travel. And insects certainly travel. You feel something move near your arm. You freeze. You inspect the blanket. Nothing. You tell yourself it is imagination. Then you notice a tiny insect near the bedding. You sit up. You stare. Bedbugs are among the most unpleasant possibilities in any historical sleeping environment. They hide in cracks, furniture, bedding, walls. They emerge when people sleep. They feed, then disappear. They are incredibly difficult to eliminate without modern treatments. You brush the blanket. Nothing happens. You look again. Still nothing. You decide not to spend the entire night searching. Sleep wins. Eventually. You wake later. The room is darker. Your body is warm beneath the blanket. Your face is cold. You pull the blanket higher. A tiny draft moves through the room. You realize how important architecture is to comfort. The building does not have perfect insulation. Wind can enter through gaps. Cold air can move through windows. Walls may retain moisture. Roofs can leak. Rain can create dampness. You think about winter. Suddenly, you feel grateful that tonight is not particularly cold. A medieval winter night would be much harder. Firewood must be collected or purchased. Fuel must be conserved. People gather near hearths. Beds may be surrounded by curtains or placed in warmer parts of the house. Multiple layers of bedding become essential. Your modern bedroom feels like a completely different technological achievement. You close your eyes again. This time, you sleep. For a while. Then a noise wakes you. Someone is arguing outside. You hear muffled voices. A door closes. Footsteps move away. You wonder what happened. Then you realize you will probably never know. The city is full of strangers. Their lives overlap through walls and streets. You hear pieces of other people's lives without seeing them. A baby cries. A dog barks. Someone coughs. A cart rolls. A person laughs. Then everything becomes quiet again. You lie still. The room feels strangely peaceful. You begin thinking about the people sleeping all around you. A merchant, a baker, a laborer, a servant, a child, a wealthy household, a poor family. Everyone needs sleep. Everyone closes their eyes. Everyone becomes vulnerable. And everyone wakes to another day of work. You turn onto your side. Your body finally relaxes. Then you hear scratching. You open your eyes. The wall. Again. You stare at it. The scratching continues. You whisper to yourself that you are not going to investigate. You pull the blanket over your head. The sound stops. You wait. Nothing. You lower the blanket. Scratch. You raise it again. You begin laughing silently. This is ridiculous. You have traveled through medieval Paris, only to spend your nights negotiating with rodents. Eventually, exhaustion wins. Again, morning arrives. You wake with a stiff neck. The mattress has not been kind. You sit up. Your body feels sore. You stretch. You wonder how people become accustomed to sleeping like this. The answer is simple. They have no alternative. Human beings adapt remarkably well to their surroundings. A medieval child does not grow up expecting a memory foam mattress. A medieval worker does not compare pillow softness. A medieval household does not complain that the bedroom temperature is 2 degrees too low. People develop expectations based on what is normal. You would adapt too. Probably. You leave the room. The street is cold. You see people carrying firewood. This makes sense now. Fuel is essential. Fire provides warmth. Cooking, light. It is one of the most important technologies in the household. But fire also creates danger. You pass a house where smoke escapes through the roof. The smell is strong. Inside, someone is preparing breakfast. You realize that smoke exposure is part of daily life. Without modern chimneys and ventilation systems, indoor air can become smoky. People breathe it. Clothing absorbs it. Walls darken. The smell remains. You cough. A worker looks at you. He seems amused. Perhaps you are still not very good at medieval life. You continue. A baker is already working. The oven glows. Heat fills the room. You stop outside. For a moment, the bakery feels wonderful. Warmth. Bread. Light. You consider staying there all morning. Unfortunately, you cannot. You have another day to survive. You walk through the city. You notice how many people live close together. Buildings rise several stories. Upper floors extend over narrow streets. Windows face each other. Neighbors can hear neighbors. Privacy is limited. A modern home gives you a private space. A medieval urban home often gives you shared space. Families live together. Workers may sleep near their workplaces. Servants may share rooms. Beds may be shared. Sleeping arrangements depend heavily on wealth and household structure. You pass a house where several people are already awake. One person carries water. Another prepares food. A child sits near the doorway. The household is already functioning. There is no slow morning. Work begins quickly. You keep walking. The sun rises. Paris becomes louder. You realize that sleep is not only about comfort. It is about survival. Rest helps people work. Work provides food. Food supports the household. The household supports the city. Even something as simple as sleep is connected to the larger system. You reach a small square. Someone is setting up a stall. Another person sweeps the area. A horse drinks from a trough. A dog sleeps nearby. The city is beginning another cycle, perhaps because every night here contains small uncertainties. Will the room stay warm? Will the roof keep out rain? Will insects stay away? Will rodents leave the food alone? Will the neighbors remain quiet? Will smoke become unbearable? Will your mattress remain comfortable enough to sleep? Modern life removes many of these questions. That is easy to forget. You simply expect sleep to happen. You expect the room to be safe. You expect warmth. You expect privacy. You expect clean bedding. You expect reliable light. You expect quiet. Medieval people had to work for many of those things. You continue toward the river. Morning mist hangs over the water. The city looks beautiful. For a moment, you forget the dirt. The animals. The pests. The smoke. The uncomfortable bed. The endless labor. You see sunlight touching the rooftops. Church towers rise above the city. Boats move slowly along the river. People cross bridges. Paris is alive. Beautiful, messy, crowded, human. You stop to watch. Then your stomach growls. Again. You laugh. Apparently, even after everything, you still need breakfast. You turn toward the market. But today, something else catches your attention. A public fountain. People gather around it. Water is being collected. You remember how important water is, and you suddenly realize that you have been thinking about cleanliness without fully understanding the water system that makes it possible. Where does the water come from? Who controls it? Who carries it? Where does dirty water go? And what happens when too many people need it at once? You approach the fountain. The crowd thickens. Buckets knock against each other. People wait. Someone